Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. Thank you for joining us on another Friday workflow webinar. Today we are going to be covering A2 life and how to mic talent. I'm joined as always with our Pro Market Development team, Miss Jen Liang Shabu and Mr. Ben Escobedo. Thank you guys for being here. And today we have some fantastic guests, which are Stephanie Farina, Theater and Musical A2, Mr. Craig Rovello, Broadcast A2 veteran, and Miss Jenny Montgomery, another theater and opera A2. So without further ado, let's jump into some conversations here. First off, I'd just like you guys to kind of go around the room and talk to us a bit about who you are, what you do, mainly your work environment, and maybe a little bit about how you got into the industry, and give us a little bit of your career story abridged. Craig, we can start with you.
Hi, my name's Craig. I got into this business, and I wish I could make it up better. Drinking and playing softball. That's how I started in this business. I was a bartender at a local bar in Pasadena, California, and in came a gentleman who was sort of a record producer, really low-end record producer. And from there, I worked at a comedy club called the Ice House in Pasadena. And in 1988, because I'm getting old now, Rosie O'Donnell Comedy Spotlight came in, and they were doing some, I guess, early VH1 stuff. And I was the junior sound man there, one mic and scared to death of it. And I met a gentleman who was a mixer there, Ish Garcia, who said, "You're hanging out enough, you might as well work." And 30-something years later, here I am.
And what do you mainly do now?
I do live TV with a musical component, so Grammys, Academy Awards, Emmys, stuff like that, and mostly live TV stuff. I like live TV. I tried movies early on. I tried a bunch of that stuff, and that waiting around for 12 hours is not in my DNA. I like live TV. It's like being shot out of a clown cannon. You got to get it right, and you don't get to miss. So, you know. I like the rush. The people are fun, but everyone's on point we do 3-hour shows, and at the end you do a 4 or 5 hour loadout and you move on like a big carny. So, but mostly live TV now, which as you well know, there is no live TV right now.
Awesome.
I am in Chicago right now. I am I work primarily for IATSE Local 2, and I do a lot of freelance mixing of musicals and musicals backstage. I'm kind of the general story. I was a theater kid in high school and in middle school. I started young, and then went to college to be a high school drama teacher. That was actually what I was going to go do, and did that. And I was in Florida. I went to University of South Florida. I did that for about 6 months at the age of 21, which is a great time to teach high school, and didn't like it at all. My college roommate at the time is from Northwest Indiana, so he was moved to Chicago. And when you're 21, you do things like that. You just go, okay, let's move. And so I moved to Chicago with kind of I knew I liked audio, but like no real plans. I did general theater studies, right? Moved to Chicago, applied for a bunch of internships. David Naughton at the Goodman hired me on a whim because he said I looked like I wanted to learn. And so I started there as an intern in 2007. And then kind of worked my way up. I was there for 10 years total. I left in 2017. So through there, I started as an intern, then became like the overhire, and then worked in the smaller theater. And then I ended up, my final thing there was being the audio head. And kind of with me, I get like really rambunctious when I stop learning. So I felt like I learned everything I could learn at the Goodman. And 2017, I left. And now I just do a bunch of freelance stuff. I mix the Lyric Opera in Chicago does a musical every year. It's like part of their season to do a musical, and so I'm their musical mixer there. I learned how to mix musicals at the Goodman. I learned how to A2 at the Goodman. And then I just kind of learned everything on the job. I learned everything kind of just doing and then finding self-education, watching webinars like this kind of stuff. Making mistakes, learning from those mistakes, those kind of things. And then like everything else in this industry, you do things, you meet people, you're not a jerk, and you kind of know what you're doing, so you get more work. So that's kind of how
solid checklist right there.
Yeah.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I kind of rule by 3 rules in my life: be on time, don't be a jerk, and bring a wrench, and you'll succeed at anything. That's kind of how I roll. So yeah, that's kind of my story.
That's
awesome.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Right. So I wandered into theater when I was in high school. It was something that I was aware of when I was even in elementary school, because the high school at the time would do summer productions out in the park, and I was always like, oh, I want to do that. I want to do that when I'm in high school, when I get old enough. So once I wandered off into the theater, dabbled as a musician for a while through high school, but wandered into the theater and just went, oh, I like this. And, started painting sets and, building things and lighting things. And by the time I was 16, I cold called the local performing arts center that had road shows and stuff, because I had a car and I could, get out. I was just like, hi, I work at the high school theater. Can I, the TD was so sweet and, invited me up, and I checked out the place. And by the time I left, he had put me on the call for that weekend to do a load in for one of the road shows. And I was hooked, once I found out that I could get paid for doing this stuff that I was already having so much fun doing, I was in. So, yeah, continued on doing that sort of stuff. I thought that I was going to be a lighting designer. That's what I went to school for. But, was always open to learning all the other areas, because I always felt that if you knew what other people's jobs are and what you had, like, a better understanding of how the whole shows go together, instead of you thinking, oh, that carpenter or that electrician just being a jerk, just let me hang my stuff. There's usually a reason why. Some things, you need to see the big picture. Some things need to happen in a certain way. So, had a great time doing all that. Did go to school for a little while, started in college, dropped out, went on the road with a bus and truck tour, came back, eventually went to college at Wayne State University in Detroit, left there, got married, moved to New York. My husband and I both work in the industry. We both are in Local 1. He mixes Chicago the Musical. That's his main gig. And then I've always, we started off working in a shop back then, ProMix. At the time, I still thought I was going to be a lighting designer, but ended up working in a sound shop, which I was cool with, because it was a gig. And I just started being asked to do other things, being sent out on small shows, doing just getting to know that side of the business. It was tough at first, but eventually I like to eat, and trying to become trying to become a designer at the time. Being a designer is always difficult, but I just kind of went, I'm okay with this, because I've always liked the nuts and bolts, the putting things together, the figuring out the puzzles, the doing that, whether it was, a sound system or just taking apart, say, an MS-400, because I worked in comm for a while, just like putting things together and how does this work, and making it work. But yeah, so I wandered off into audio. I've done that for about 25 years now in New York. I've worked on Broadway, done some television, dabbled in television, done a couple Broadway tours, done I guess the bigger television things have been AGT, and then all of the NBC Lives that have happened in New York. I've done the East Coast, and I think Craig's done some of the West Coast for musical performances on TV. But yeah, Sound of Music, Peter Pan, The Wiz, and then Jesus Christ Superstar. Done all of those, which are live television, just like as Craig was saying, live. I stayed in live theater because I loved that, the rush of it. You got to do it, make it right. If something hiccups, you figure it out, and the show must go on. And that's why I love live television as well. I've never done stuff to tape. Yeah. And then also, I've been working on the Tony Awards for the last, I think, 13 years. I think this would have been my 13th or 14th season doing the Tony Awards, which, again, like those live musicals, it's like the ultimate mashup of Broadway and television, because as Craig can probably attest to, you've done plenty of award shows with, musicians that are used to doing those things. But then you have these theater kids.
That show's hard. I've heard a lot of stories about the Tonys. It's not an enviable job to be an A2 with all of the stuff you guys got going on. Right. A lot of stuff going on that show.
I always think that's funny because I've never done those other award shows until recently when the Grammys were in New York. But hearing the stories from other TV A2s and how they dread the Tony Awards, how it's so difficult because you have so many mics and so many moving parts and all the special mic rigging and stuff. Because I was brought in years ago just specifically to do the mic rigging, the Broadway style rigging, and then sort of then hide it a little bit more for television. And for me, I was just like, I'm just doing another show. I'm seeing all my friends, all my Broadway friends. I'm seeing just all in one place. So it's just a big love fest for me, where they just dread it, and I'm always like, "Come on, guys!" You know.
That's funny.
But most recently, I guess the big chunk that I've just left out that I've been doing for the last 10 years is working at the Metropolitan Opera, hiding microphones on singers for broadcast, for our HD broadcasts that go around the world.
Awesome.
That's, yeah.
No, thank you guys. Thank you so much. So it kind of sounds like you all obviously have very similar jobs as an A2, but maybe in some different segments. So I guess if you want to talk a little bit about what does your day-to-day look like, or what would you say your common list of tasks are, and maybe we can vary between broadcast and theater and maybe even opera a little bit here between the three of you to talk about the minor differences and what an A2 does on a daily basis. You may want to fire away.
Well,
Yeah.
for me, it would be dependent on the show. Dancing with the Stars, we mic pants, we put in lithium batteries. We don't really mic talent per se, the dancers. We mic the clothes. So we get that done early in the day. That's one of the rare shows versus a singing show versus an award show where you just, it's different. So if you're doing an award show and you're doing production mics versus, singing mics or whatever, or you're doing host, it just varies. If at least for award shows, I do all the vocal mics. So now I have to figure out a flow. I get with a couple gentlemen who figure out a grid, and we figure out if it goes from one stage to two stages. And on larger shows, Grammys, they have 3, maybe 4 stages, 2 big ones, one out in the center, and downstage. So with the 27 to 50 mics that are there, not including artist mics coming in, you kind of have to figure out how does it get from point A to point B. Because in the old paradigm before COVID, you would take 7 mics from one stage, wipe them off as you're running while sets are being pulled out and stuff, and throw them up for that. And that's part of the flow. And then you're changing heads, and you're going through, and people are meeting you halfway, and they go out to the house. So that's a different kind of part of what a broadcast A2 does in that sense. So, and if you're doing a talk show, which we do out here, and I'm back there, you've got maybe one act, maybe it's a cooking segment, and are you hiding stuff somewhere along the way so you can hear clinking of stuff, or is it a camera mic? A lot of like the Golden Globes has, I think, 12 camera mics. So you got to make sure those are all close because they're in the audience stuck. So now you want to hear crowd reaction versus that stuff. Oh, kind of without taking up too much time, it's kind of depending on the job, at least for the TV portion of this, what you're into. And what you were mentioning earlier, Jen, when after those musicals came to the West Coast, we did Grease. Not a lot of West Coast A2s at that point had done hair miking like you did. So there was a huge crash course, and we called some friends back on the East Coast. It's like, okay, and then we're learning to paint mic cables and all that. Yeah, see, and that was all fairly new to me. Maybe not everyone, but a great deal of us. I've hidden a boatload of mics, but now we're getting the little hair things, and and which is you've done 1,000 times, and we're like, okay, what are we doing? So we became good friends with the hair people, and that's how it started for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to mention, I've been amazed because I've been able to touch so many different portions of A2 life that it's always amazing to me how many different types of A2s there are, and how it's not like, oh, you're an A2. You could be hired as just a music A2 or just a comms A2, or as we call it with the live productions with the Broadway A2s. You can be you can be an A2 on Broadway for a musical. You can be, you know, they're just, it's just amazing to me, especially when I did the VMAs, one of those a few years ago, that there are all these A2s. And I'm just like, oh, so because I've come from the Broadway world, and it's stuff you probably know. There's usually one, maybe two, and you're doing everything. You're monitoring, you've built the racks, you've set up the racks, you put out the paddles, you run everything, you put in the batteries, you mic the talent, you are handing mics out, you're running back and monitoring it, and then you collect it all at the end and change the batteries and do it all over again. You're used to being an army of one, and then suddenly you're there. And I kept going, so my job is just to hand these two mics to those two presenters. That's what I'm doing tonight.
But sometimes those two presenters are out in the house, and then they go over there, and then they go over there, and then you set up a band. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the whole scope of it. But then again, there are a couple other people over there dealing with the 90 rad belt packs, or the whatever, whoever the the Riedel, the whatever, they're dealing with all of that. And so it's amazing to me that there's so many different iterations of A2 life.
And I think because everyone has done their job so well for so long, not just audio, but lighting and everyone, the expectations and timelines now of these award shows and stuff, and probably what you guys do too, is they expect you hit the ground running and be up in 2 hours to do a full deal. And that's why you need, like, we don't touch comms at all, because you have 150 belt packs, you have 57 mics, you have monitor guys and maybe 100 ears redundant. And now you're putting up 15,000 feet of what used to be RG8 for that, running around an arena and stuff. There's just the expectations and timelines. And on some of these award shows, you have 23 acts. Some are live, some are partial live, but they're still, you got to get them in and out.
Yeah, that's the no, you go. Go ahead. No, I would say that's because I primarily do theater, but also with local too. I do some other things, and we just did the NBA All-Stars in the All-Star game in Chicago, and that was my really first thing with how TV works. And you're right, it's very different. It's very different seeing, because like you said, in theater, normally in like not-for-profit theater, which is a lot in Chicago, it's literally one person is the A2, and you have 45 mics, and you are the on. Essentially, right, the A1 is proscenium house, and the A2 is proscenium to upstage. So yeah, we're doing everything from talking to the designer and figuring out how they want mic placements. Like, okay, where do you want these mics? We go to rehearsal, we watch, so my job kind of starts from even before, right? Because theater, we have a longer timeline. So it starts from like interfacing with the designer, figuring out, okay, you talk to the designer, talk to the costume designer. And there's 500 hats in the show because they're doing Music Man. All right. So where can these go? How are we going to do these? So figuring that all out, then like you do load in, right, as the A2, so you're helping with load in because it's like, a 5-person crew normally. Then you peel off from load in and you're like, okay, now Stephanie's going to go do A2 work. And you sit in a room for 3 days and rig up all these 45 mics with ear rigs and clips. And then half of them are going to be wrong anyway by the time you get a tech.
You got to start somewhere.
Exactly. You do all these, and then we go to rehearsal and do all the fittings for the actors, interfacing with now the stage manager to figure out when we can fit them on them, because, first day of tech, they're dealing with costumes and they don't want to deal with mics. And then, so you do all those, you try to guess paint color, right? You do whatever you can for that. Then you get to tech, and then that is all about, I'm more hands-on A2. So like a lot of A2s, and also because I'm a female, it makes it easier. Like guys normally have to like interface more with the dressers because they're dudes and they can't see women. But me, I can just be like, hey, so I'm coming in. So I can go in there, and I'm more hands-on because I'm a really, really perfectionist, and I want to make sure everything's proper placement. Well, I'm more of like, I'm going to put it on you. I'm going to make sure this is good. So you go and put it on all the talent, and then like you said, you're doing that. You're checking placement constantly. You're battering up the mics. You're working with the A1. You're trying to pre-listen off stage to make sure there's no errors, right, during the show. And then if there is errors, you're going to fix it. And then you're trying to, so it's kind of the similar thing of like, you're kind of doing a bunch of different things, but getting shot out of the cannon, and you just got to figure it out in the moment. And, oh, their mic is cracking. Let's, okay, well, Hamilton's mic's cracking. All right, well, can we limp through this? Okay, you're limping through right now. All right, great. Okay, and your radio to him. All right, okay, I have my tracker sheet. Okay, he comes off stage left. all right, can we do this fast? Like that kind of adrenaline is, I think, what we all love about what we do. Yeah.
Right. And then, there's that whole troubleshooting element. It's like, okay, that crackle. Well, was it like a sizzle or was it a pop or was it which then launches into a whole nother,
and that's
checklist of what could it be?
Yeah. And when you're teaching somebody how to A2, that's always the funnest thing, because you're listening, you're like, hey, when you have younger stations or whatever, you're like, oh yeah, that's a sweat out. Well, how do you know? Okay, well, I was like,
listen,
because you have these headphones on.
It sounds like it's underwater.
Yeah. It's like, oh no, that crackle is actually the element, not the connector. Well, how do you know? Yeah, it's like, well, because I've heard this sound 7 times over the, in this run alone. So I know that, it's one of the things you just get with experience, just listening to all these mistakes and failing a lot, and then realizing, oh, that's the hair crackle, not the connector crackle. Yeah,
exactly.
And then the ever-present microphonic mic.
Yes.
Oh, that's the best. Or the one where you're like, why did this sound? Wait, why don't I hear this person talking? Oh, they forgot to put their mic on, and it's in their dressing room.
I'm hearing it through the program.
The
program speaker.
Or a last-minute wardrobe, or on Dancing with the Stars. Sometimes they'll spray a mic by accident because the hair and makeup, everyone. All of a sudden, you across there, it's like, and yes.
On and on.
It makes you really good at like troubleshooting in a second, because you have 4 seconds to get it done. So,
Right.
Yeah. And you have to figure out how to get the mic on and off while everyone is in there. And you got a stage manager in this here. You got your mixer in this here. You got talent and their people looking at you. Are we going to get it done? It's like, if everyone just be quiet for a second, we will get this done.
We can do this.
An answer first. Yeah.
It's like, everybody breathe. I will tell you when I'm finished. Yep.
Right. Exactly.
My line is, I'll tell you when you need to know something. When I say that, hopefully everyone calms down just enough to,
let you get through.
I'm sure you guys get it too. People will start troubleshooting from every PL around you.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's like, guys, I know you know what you're doing, and I would love to listen to this, but you don't see what I'm seeing. Give me a second. I promise you, we will take care of this.
Right. Yeah, I had just to share a little baby A2 mistake from the first pink contract I was ever on. I was on the first Les Mis. And Thenardier comes off stage, and he's got to change his hat, and so he's going down into the sewers, and he's got to get down into his costume to undo the connector and undo it, and then feed the other one down. Well, I dove in there, and I undid a connector and pulled out the antenna.
That's
nice.
Panic, put on the antenna. But we made it through. But it was just that moment of, don't do that ever again.
Learning moments, right? It just comes with experience a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, slow is fast and fast is smooth, or whatever that is. Yeah, 100%. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, because we're talking about like the day to day, and I was going to say that in television, everything's different all the time. Broadway, when you're doing an actual musical theater, you go through a different scheduling. You have time. You generally have time, especially in the Broadway world. Yeah. Things are rehearsed over such a long period that you have 2 A2s, a 1 A2. You can get through it because things are laid out. And I find that Broadway is very regimented. Like once things get dialed in, this is the way it's done. This microphone, this person gets these exact clips in this direction, this far apart, they'll put it on, or we'll help, or whatever. But it becomes very regimented, and you just kind of have that machine.
And
go ahead.
No, please, I interrupted you. Keep going.
No, I was going to say, but then in the opera world, it's a little bit different because we don't mic as many people, but we tend to have only, if we get more than 2 people being mic'd, we end up with 2 A2s just because the timing of it is different. We don't get as much lead time, and we don't get as much rehearsal time. And oftentimes, because it's for broadcast, we don't get as many rehearsals. Usually there are like 2 orchestra rehearsals with the orchestra with full dress and everything, 1 complete final dress. And then opening night is usually the day it goes to air on the radio. so we don't get as much time. So it's very important for us to we kind of have to nail it. That if we're doing it in HD, we'll usually have like a little bit more time, only because we'll get a couple of radio rehearsal. I call it a radio rehearsal, but it's just being broadcast on the radio, so it doesn't have to be hidden as well. And sometimes that'll afford us a little bit of a cushion to get that done. But
that's a perfect segue into we're coming up on halfway through here, and I figured we've got quite a few questions here already about the title. So I'd love to kind of go ahead, Craig.
I just want to say, based on what Jen's talking about, and Stephanie already does it, I'm sure, for anyone who hasn't done this yet, carry an extra set of batteries, carry some double stick, carry some gaff tape, transport, whatever, because you will not be able to go from the problem to get your stuff and then go back to the problem.
Right.
So,
Fanny packs are your best friend.
And I carry, now that we have rechargeable batteries, I carry AA's. I carry every kind of rechargeable battery because you just don't know.
Yeah.
I carry a roll. Skip Ken out of New York showed me a little trick, and I carry some extra gaff tape on a card.
Gaff on the
back of the credential.
On the back of the credential.
Absolutely.
Actually, on a room key too. Strips on the back here, but on a room key for longer strips, because sometimes it's not your department that needs gaff tape. So, anyway,
or you'll gaff tape on the Sharpie.
Oh yeah.
Totally. So back to the topic here, Craig. That's a great point, though. Jenny, I think maybe we should pivot over to the second half of this, and that's, how are you guys miking talent? What are the goals for miking talent? How does that differ between your industry? And I know some of you have some gear and some demos to actually show some of the tools and some of the processes you guys are using to the viewers here today. So if anybody wants to kick off that segment, fire away.
Since I'm not doing a demo, here's my little thought on mic and talent. First, know who to talk to first. You don't always talk to talent. Sometimes you just don't have the luxury of it. Right. In certain cases, you will never put a mic on someone. At one of the American Idols I was doing, you weren't allowed to mic one of the talents, so you'd hand it off, say, here, I just want to be able to, let me dress it here, but you put it on. Here's how I think it should go based on the wardrobe. Know who you're talking to first. Usually I go to head of security if I don't know anybody, even for a hand mic, because if they see me running at them, usually that's permission for them to drop me right there and then, as you know. So I always say, here, my name is Craig. I have this mic that's going to your boss. If you see me running towards them, I am not going to hurt them. And no, I'm either going to fix a mic or hand a mic off. So don't hit me. And in the case of women, sometimes I always say, hi, my name's Craig. I only think it's proper because I'm going to stick my hand somewhere around you. So hi, try and be nice, because it's such an intimate thing that we do. You run your hand up a shirt or down the back, or in the case of, I had a full length dress and there was no garments underneath. So you kind of had to drop the mic down and put it on a boot, and you never know what you're going to run into. And you guys know that it's never easy. And on dance shows, you just can't tape them on the pants a certain way, because they'll fly away. And one case, somebody was so sweaty on a cooking show, of all things, that it just sweated out. Now you had to go
hot in the kitchen.
I
often say that what we do is a lot like nursing and waitressing, because we get very close to people very quickly, and like we're in their space, and then we're always serve it up with a smile, and you're always prepared for anything.
And at least at this level of audio, and that, you really are talking to lighting. You're talking to stage managers. You're talking to talent wranglers. You're talking to everybody. You're talking to a camera guy, because sometimes there's a move. In my case, running mic stands in and out sometimes, because they appear and disappear. You got to talk to camera guys and utilities, and and we've had mics rigged that drop in from somewhere. So now you're talking to the stage hands, and it's fun, but anyway, back to the other thing. Sorry.
No, that's great. It's all good information.
Do you want me to jump into the demo, or?
Yeah, actually, Stephanie, I think you mentioned that you were going to rig up some hair miking, and that actually came up as a question from the
Awesome.
folks tuning in.
Let
So
me
let's kick
switch
that
my
off first.
camera. You guys see my other camera, yeah, with the stuff? Great.
We do, yeah.
Great. All right,
Yes.
let me hit over there. All right.
Real quick, while we're transitioning, audience, if you guys have any questions, I know we put this in the chat, and as always, please put them into the question poll or question box on your screen. We will try to get to them, as many as we can through this webinar.
So I guess I'll show this first, so you know. So normally, and I'm sure Craig and Jenny have the same stuff, but I kind of travel with this like tackle box, my A2 kit, and it's like 2 layers, and it kind of has, because I primarily do theater. So it is, see, there it is. So it has everything I need for theater. Anything I may even remotely need is in here, right? All sorts of kinds of tape, a P-Touch, my elastic, which is why I went in there, a bunch of, so we use like so many different kinds of tape, right? Because you never know what kind of situation you run into. So we have, and it's all medical supplies, right? So we have like Tegaderm strips that I use for earwigs and other kind of tape and Transpor and all these 1,000 different kinds of tapes. I even have, we were talking about painting mics, and I have like an artist thing of 1,000 Coptic markers that one just fell out for like, you know, for all different kinds of painting the mics. So with that being said, I went in there for that. But yeah, so normally you bring, a lot of times you're expected to bring your own stuff. Like it's just part of the gig, you know, like a craftsman have their own tools. But I will show, I'll try my best with the camera. But I'll do a, oh, I need fluoro wire. Stand by, let me grab my fluoro wire. I believe I have some right here. Here it is, great. Okay, so I'll do a hair rig one, because I can show an ear rig too, but I don't know if we'll run out of time, but I'll do a hair rig because it's easier. So me and Jenny were actually on our test thing yesterday, we're talking about this. So mics, for theater, primarily the location for us, a lot of the ideal location, if the costume designer is happy with it, is usually like, we love center forehead, right? If there's not a lot of hats, that's like the place you have to do least EQ. So we love mics like right there. And it's interesting with this black mic, you think it wouldn't go on an actor with my skin tone, but if they're not wearing a wig, it could actually go on somebody like me because of my hair color. So in this case, if it was on someone like me, these caps just come off. So I would actually get a cap of a different color and put my skin color on that cap and just cap it on like that. So with that, in theater, there's a lot of dancing and and a lot of movement, right? They're doing all sorts of stuff. So you don't really want to, the first thing, make sure I get enough light. So we want to be able to properly have this be directional, right? And right now you can't because it's not flimsy enough. So this is fluoro wire that you can buy anywhere, literally, Joann's, Michael's, online. So I cut a little bit of, let me know if you guys can't see this or it looks weird, but I cut a little bit of fluoro wire, right? So this is one of the supplies, fluoro wire, and then these are just snips, like standard wire snips. And the first thing I do normally is now I'm going to take this fluoro wire and I'm actually going to wrap it around. I'm going to wrap it around the mic, right? So now I'm making the mic that I can bend in. I'm going to go a few inches down, right? So I'm going to wrap it around there. It's kind of hard to see, sorry guys, but wrap it around there. I'm going to cut off my excess.
I don't know how well that could.
Yeah, it looks great, Jenny. Yeah. She's got one done already.
Oh, perfect. Look at that. Amazing. Yeah, I wrap it around like that. So now, yeah, exactly. Look at that. Teamwork. So now
out of the oven, it's done.
It's perfect. So now on talent though, like you don't want to put something like this on an actor for us because then it's going to pinch them and nobody wants to hurt an actor because then you have to hear them. So so this is where it comes in for these. This torture device is called a Hellerman tool, right? So it's actually used, from what I heard, the wives' tale, is it's actually used in the medical field. It used to be used for like heart stents. I don't know if it's actually true. It's just a story I heard. And then there's a thing called Hellerman sleeves. This one I'm using is, let me use a different color so you can see it better. So this one is a Hellerman sleeve. Yeah, they're like little rubber, and they come in a bunch of different sizes.
Little noodles.
Yeah, and you can get them. A lot of people now, because they're used so widely for miking, you can get them on eBay's where I get it a lot, but you can also get them on
Amazon.
Like, yeah, mic supply. Like there's like a bunch of like mic supply stores, and you can get them there too. But yeah, so I cut it, and I usually my first step is I cut 3/4 and 1/4, so I end up with 2 pieces that look like. Let me do a black one so you can see it. Hold on. I end up with 2 pieces that look like that. right? So it's like a quarter and then a little piece over there. So I take the longer one first, and I normally grab some kind of lube, and I usually use hand sanitizer. I got some right here. Just because
back of my hand.
Yeah, that, or I can also, so you do that kind of thing, right? And it's also good because whatever chemicals are in the hand sanitizer actually break down the plastic of the Hellerman sleeve a little bit, because it becomes a trick. This is something that with practice you get better, but the first times you're going to snap yourself in the face a bunch, and it's great fun. So you kind of slip it on there, and then I do this little 2-finger wiggle game. I probably got too much hand sanitizer on this one, but kind of do this little game. Maybe, hang on, get it on there. There we go. You kind of shove it. There it is. It's coming out. You shove it, and it's really just a game of practice. So you end up getting it so it looks like that, right? So now I'm taking the tip of the mic, and what I like to do, and Jenny, tell me if you do something different, but I like to also get it around where this thing is ending. It's hard to see, sorry, but also where the cap begins. So for me, it secures the cap in place so that the cap doesn't fall off. So I try to get both in one thing. That's why this one's a little bit longer.
Gotcha.
So I get it on there, and then with my fingers, here, I am pushing off the Hellerman, and again, it takes practice.
Yeah.
And when you're doing it live on a webinar, of course, you're gonna not do it as you want to. But these are things are slipping off now, and you're kind of coaxing it off there, right? Once I get it off, hold on, there we go. All right. There we go. Okay, and again, it just takes, you're not gonna hurt the mic. So now as I get it, it's kind of half on, half off. You guys can see that. So now I'm gonna extend the Hellerman sleeve and pull it off and try to get it so that it is over the cap. And let me find some background, here we go. So that it's over the cap and over the wire at the same time. I mean, it's hard to see, it's black on black, but so the Hellerman starts there and ends up there. Sorry, trying to make it work. So then my other piece of Hellerman sleeve that I cut, which is right here, I'm going to use for this pokey side of the wire there, right? So this is really just to keep the floor wire in place and also to not have it pinch the after. So again, a little bit of hand sanitizer and slip it on, and I'm going to get it on this tool. And this tool you can get on eBay, or I think I got this one actually on Amazon too. Just called a Hellerman tool, and they come with different points, right? So they have different gauges. The gauge of Hellerman sleeves I use, just for your reference, is H15 is the gauge I use for this stuff. I also get H20 for when I do strain relief on connectors. So now I'm going to take it. I'm going to slip my thing through here, right? And I want to be really careful not to pinch the head of the mic at this point, right? You want to be careful not to have that clamp in the sleeve. So again, I pull it off, and now I have this, and I'm protecting the pokey side of the mic. So now I have, again, black on black, sorry guys, but Hellerman sleeve, floral wire, Hellerman sleeve. So now, in theory, I can put this mic, right, on, there we go, on a head, and if it needs, and let's say, you know, a hat hit it and it goes, I can make it directional and put it where I need it, right, because it's part of a wire. So the next part, so we use in theater toupee clips, literally meant for wigs, right? Meant for, yes, perfect. That's exactly it. So we use toupee clips. They're literally going wigs for, it helps keep wigs in place. And so these are already threaded. I'll show you quickly how we thread them. And they come in different sizes, large, medium, small, depending on hair. Like for my kind of hair, I'd probably use a large because I have a lot of it. For somebody with shorter hair, like a gentleman, I would use a smaller, same size. I'd use a smaller size, right? And they come in different colors as well. So to thread them, I will thread one. Let's do a white one. See it better. We'll do a white small one. Okay, so this is the white small one. So I get standard elastic, right? Again, get it at any online, get it at any arts and crafts store. Because really, this is all arts and crafts, as Jenny was saying before. That's what we're doing is arts and crafts. So on these toupee clips are little holes on the side, right? So we take our elastic and we thread through the hole. And there's many different ways people do this. This is just the way I do it that works for me. 500 ways to do it, right? But I literally just double knot this. Okay, and then I take the excess here. This is this elastic is probably a little too thin for this. I like to use something slightly thicker, but it's just what I have on hand. And then I go through the other hole. There we go. And you're just threading it through and then making another knot. You want to make sure that the black along the toupee clip is kind of taut, because this is what's securing it to the mic, right? I'm going to do this. And again, I'm just going to loop through. Loop through and make another double knot there. And another double knot. And the next process after I make this double knot, there we go. And also, so you guys know, I did on somewhere in the Shure's archives is a really well shot version of me doing this that we did last year in May. So if you want to see a really detailed version of this, it's a while back in the archives, but it's there. So you can see like professional cameras showing you how I did this, so you can see it a little better. But then I just clip off excess. And then the next step is, in my kit, I always carry with me clear nail polish, because I will clear nail polish the two ends of this elastic to keep it from fraying. Because in theater, we have to make it last, especially on long running shows, for as long as we can make it last, right? You often have to do maintenance, especially on long running shows. So, but we want to make it last as long as we can. So to prevent fraying, we'll clear nail polish the two tips. But my out of the oven version, which I will show, and I'm going to use white on these so you guys can see it better. For someone with my hair, I usually would use 3, maybe 4 toupee clips. But it's as simple as this. You have to figure out which way the person's hair will part. So for example, if my hair is going to part this way, right, we want the toupee clip to go into the part. So that's what you have to think about when you put it on the mic. So if I think of it this way, right, these are the teeth. These little things, all they do is pop open. Similar to those clips you can get at CVS or whatever, right? So the thing just pops open, right? And then to secure it, it just pops closed. So it's going to pop open. It's going to go into the part. It goes in, you take it, and you push it down. And now it's locked in place, okay? But, I don't know if you guys can see it. There we go. So this part of it, though, to actually get it attached to the mic, you take the tip of the mic. So again, I got to be conscious of which way the mic is going. So for me, the teeth have to go that way. I take the tip of the mic, I loop through once, pull it, I loop through twice. So then the mic ends up looking like that. Let's get better light. There we go. Mic ends up looking like that, so it's going through twice. So I'll pull this one back. I'm going to do this 3 more times. Again, I'm going to loop through once, loop through twice, and now I got 2 toupee clips on there. And we do a double looping so that it stays in place. Again, like Jenny was saying, for theater, we becomes a machine, right? So like the actors want the toupee clips as much as they can in the same spot every time because they know exactly where to clip it on the 8th show they've done that week. They don't have to think about it. So then we do a 4th, and this is our 4th. So one more time. I'm gonna go, oops, I'm gonna go over, and I'm gonna loop through. And now I have 4 toupee clips there. And then how it goes in the hair, I'm gonna try to do it on myself. So I would start, and I normally grab, let's see if I have one in my kit. I may have taken it out. Oh, I do. So usually when I mic actors myself, I'll get a comb, right? I'll find a part, I'll see where their hair, obviously talk to them, see where their hair parts, see what they're doing, right? So I'm gonna make a good part. See how successful this is, me doing it on myself. And then I'm going to, as close as I can, I'm seeing, there we go, go into the part, and I'm gonna take my 2 fingers, and usually at this point, I'll tell talent I'm pushing, so I push, and it clips in place. And then I'm gonna go further back. I'm gonna unclip the clip. There we go. And I'm gonna find the part again. I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna say pushing, I'm gonna push, and then you're not gonna be able to see this one, but now I'm going to the back. And at this point, I usually put my hand on the talent's forehead to have something to push against, so I'm not as for them to make them laugh. And then I do a last one right at the bottom of the hairline, right? And clip it there. So now in theory, right? I'm going to pull it forward because I want the mic. Now, this is all based on what the, in theater, the designer wants, about where they want the mic to actually live on the forehead. In my ideal world as an A2, I love it when it's just at the hairline, because then everybody likes me better. So in this case, I'll put it right at the hairline. And now it's in my hair. And I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's like right there. You can't really see it because it's in my hair. But in most cases, unless it's a really loud musical, this kind of placement usually works. And that's kind of what we want. So now you're not seeing any of it, right? So now in this case, if my hair is up in the show for whatever reason, we will now, what kind of Craig was talking about, we'll get a paint and paint this part of the mic that's on the neck, right? Because you don't want to see a black line going down the neck. The final step to this is I take whatever tape the actor kind of wants, and I'll take the tape off, right? So let me put my hair up so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. And this is more for strain relief, right? So I'm gonna take tape. There we go. And I'm gonna put the mic right at the neck. Take tape and I'll put tape right there. It's a little sloppy. And then now there's strain relief on the mic. You can see, it's hard to see, but there's tape right there. And the actor can do whatever they need to do. And even if this pulls, right? If this pulls because of whatever movement they're doing, there's still strain relief on the back of their neck. And in theory, if they're, you do it enough, it just becomes something that they forget about. So that's head mount. There you go.
Nice. Jenny, do you have anything to add to that?
I just, let's see. I showed you my one out of the oven here with the wire already done. I noticed that Stephanie was putting Hellermans on either end. I come from, I started doing wire work with jewelry kind of as I was beginning my A2 work. So I was doing a lot of work with just like twisting wire and stuff. So I tend to use little tools and I just kind of tap around. I use maybe a lighter gauge wire so that I don't have to put the Hellerman at the end and can kind of tap it around. I do a couple of wraps and get rid of that pointy edge at both ends, just to eliminate that one extra. But it's not one's right, one's wrong. It's just that for every A2, we all have our little tricks. I would also, word of caution, if you're using wire, to not wrap it too tightly. There are two things with that, because you can end up wrapping so tightly that your wire will end up having a memory of the wire being, the microphone cable will end up with a memory of that being wrapped around it. And then also, if you put your coils too close together, you won't get movement out of it. You'll actually just end up with sort of a spring. It'll just sort of be so floppy. It won't help you out there. Yeah. And then just up in the Hellerman to an ear rig for a moment. Oftentimes I will, for a quick ear rig, just cover the ear loop. This happens to be a plastic one with Hellerman sleeves, and then use partial Hellerman sleeves with a microphone that has wire on it. Because this way, if I need to, if I'm putting it on somebody quickly and then I might need to back this up, I can just kind of scooch it back until we get the proper placement. And then sometimes I'll throw an extra, I'll put a clip on there so that once you get this over the ear, you can pull this back for strain relief and clip it up into the hair. So just using a couple more of those pieces.
For dancing, I've been putting double stick on those ear molds back there. So,
behind the ear?
Yeah, I kind of clean it off a little bit, and then I put a piece of double stick, because you got people doing backflips and all kinds of stuff now.
Yeah, actually.
There you go.
So back in here, I'll fold a little double stick so it hits both sides, get the hair out of the way. And at least you have something like that, because, everyone does big dances now, much like that. But I don't always have the luxury of hairpins. So go ahead, Steph.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, it's the same idea you were saying with ear rigs, because I often bend my own with milliner wire, which is like hat wire, because those, a hanger.
Yeah, so often,
a hanger, that works too. Yeah.
Whatever you've got.
Exactly. I'll bend my own so it can fit them. And with that, I take, what is this? 1 3/4 by 1 3/4 Tegaderm, used again for medical stuff. And I cut it in half, and it's like the perfect size to fit right behind an ear.
Right.
Okay. And then it's also clear, so it like blends into the skin. So it's the same idea you were saying, just a different, like again, 500 ways to skin a cat, as they say.
Right.
And I just use this too. So yeah, but it's otherwise they fall off immediately. Yeah, you need that.
And what you were talking about earlier, Stephanie, about different kinds of tape, certain talent gets real reactions on the back of their neck.
Yeah, latex allergies are real.
Yep. And that's what this is also, because I have that. Yeah, I'm sure you guys do it too, like the roll Tegaderm. That's great too for when they have. You can just cut it up whatever length you want. It's also clear too. And then this usually with the people who have allergies. So that's why I have like 17 different kinds of tapes. So they're like, I can't wear tape, I'm allergic. I was like, haha, no, you can wear this.
Hold on. Nice try.
Yeah. And then I also, you were saying to like, not to handle talent with Nick gloves, but to be, like you said, the waitress, right? Whatever they need.
Right.
I bring Unisolve. So like I was working with at Ravinia here, the outdoor music festival. I was miking up opera singers there, and the lady was just not used to wearing a mic. And so I give her a headset and then I tape behind her ear. And at the end, she like screamed and I took the tape off. So I was like, okay, it's okay. So I ended up getting Unisolve, which is like it's an adhesive remover that they use in medical.
Yeah, I don't have any. And I get little packets.
Yeah, I have some somewhere. But I ended up just like as you would with like a child, not to sound horrible, but like pulling the tape and like just so that again, you want them on your side. So if the mic does go down and you go to fix it, they're not like, don't touch me.
Like, audio shouldn't hurt.
Yeah,
audio shouldn't be painful.
I know these A2s are going to take care of me. So if she went through the thing of like taking the 3 minutes and like slowly taking the tape off, and then it's also good, especially on long running shows or especially long days on TV. They get that residue on the back of the neck. I always call it the actor tattoo, right?
Yeah.
So that's good too because they can rub it down. So it just ways to like be nice to them. Yeah.
Right.
I think what you're talking about, part of because we're interfacing so intimately with them, you have to build up a rapport, or at least not piss them off. One of the two.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just can't make them happy, but at least if you smile and be friendly, like you said, show up on time, be nice, and most of the time their camp will be okay with you. It's just by sheer dumb luck. Sometimes you just, no matter what you do, ain't gonna happen. So you pass it off to the next day too.
Yeah,
right. It's true. Fresh face.
Yep.
Quick question that came in related to all this hair miking is, do you change what you do depending on whether it's natural hair or a wig?
I can, because oftentimes if somebody's wearing a wig, they'll have what's done a wig prep where all their hair is actually tucked up under a cap, like a nylon cap. So all their natural hair is gone. So you can take that mic element and use pins to pin it onto the wig cap. So we'll look at where the hairline's going to hit for the wig itself, because I'll tend to, especially for HDs, again, push the element up so it's at a natural hairline or up underneath the wig's hairline. Again, trying to hit it somewhere center, but that's not always possible. So I tried somewhere between the eyebrows. And then, so it will change slightly. I have actually used clips and pins into wigs before, but oftentimes you can get away with just a few just hairpins that you can kind of catch and flip over and tuck in.
Another thing that's really cool about wig preps is that if you have, I know Shure has the UR1Ms for the old version, and then they also have the Accent micro packs or whatever. Those are great because in wig caps you usually end up with a little like, I don't know, I call it like a little gnome hat thing. You tuck in and you can actually put the entire pack in the wig.
Right there.
You don't see a cord, you don't see anything. The fun thing about that is that if the mic goes down though, and it's a quick change, you can't really get to it to fix it. So with that, the fun story is like you have it right, it's in there, actress mic went down. I actually have in the past shoved a totally different pack in their dress and then just use the toupee clips on top of the wig just to get them through the next scene. So it's like those are little things that you like learn and then, repatch at the rack or whatever.
Right. So, a lot of it's going to have to do with what is the style of the wig. Is it something that's really tight, like a beehive that's all like really smooth, or is it going to be like this long flowy thing that's going to have some bearing on how you're doing. Yeah.
That's the interfacing with the wig
Exactly.
designer. Like, hey, can we have space in this? Is it going to ruin your wigs? And that's that whole being kind to the wig designer now and figuring that out. Yeah.
Perfect. We had another question come in about how you're addressing double miking talent. Like, what are your tips for when you have to put hide two mics on talent?
I will usually take.
Oh,
go ahead. I'm sure it's going to be a little different depending on the world. I will usually use back to this technique again, and I'll wrap the two elements together with that. Sometimes I will do this separately for the two elements, and then use the Hellerman tool to then attach here, there, and a couple throughout. That way, if I need to separate them quickly, I can just snip the Hellermans, snip the Hellermans, and then put two that have the wire on them together and be ready to go. And then I also use a Hellerman, a little tiny, sorry, Greg. I do a little piece of Hellerman of an opposite color right here and right there so that I know that's my spare.
That's cool. That's awesome.
The other thing you have to think about at the end of that, you also have a set of ears for a lot of people, and you have to talk to wardrobe about where all this hardware fits on their wardrobe. Yes. And some people are worried about bulges. You know, if they have a nice line across their back, they don't want all that. So I've stacked them from long hair and worked my way down in a line. So a mic, and then their ear pack all the way at the bottom, so it doesn't all clump somewhere along their wardrobe. Because a lot of people do worry about all the weight of that, and some wardrobes are just bloody thin and pull everything back too. So now, what color belt, what kind of belt, and you know, and then you have to worry about what it looks like on the front based on what it is. And so your wardrobe is your friend sometimes, whether you like it or not. They will save your backside, like what these ladies are doing. Hair people are your friend too, because if you can't quite get it right with all that, they'll move some hair over and they'll make it work.
Another cool thing with double miking is sometimes sometimes like bulk is a problem on the wires, like if it's somebody with thin hair, and I'll use again the Tegaderm, and I'll do exactly what Jenny was saying at the tip, but then down instead of Hellerman, I'll use my Tegaderm and I'll have obviously the two mics. Sure. And I kind of do this thing where I wrap this around and end up, I'm doing it not very good right now, but I end up wrapping it around so it ends up kind of taping it together in a way that makes it kind of, it doesn't look slick now, but if I do it right, it looks pretty slick, so that it's one line. The only problem with that is that if you need to move positions on it, like if they want one mic, you have to undo it to fix that. But sometimes in long running shows, this ends up being a little bit, I found it a little bit better when things are locked in place, because then it locks it in place.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, let me ask you a quick question. Have you ever had talent say, I don't want it in their hair?
Yes. I've had talent a lot be like, can I just have an ear rig? And I have to in those cases, I usually blame the designer because they're never going to meet the designer. So I usually say, look, I'm sorry, my boss, we really need it here. I'm sorry. Can you just do me a favor? And normally if I go from that angle of like, look, do me a favor. If it's really bad, we'll fix it later. But
For Christmas Story, we wound up putting on the inside of the arm on the glasses because he just wasn't comfortable with it in his hair. And then we had two because it was a principal. So now you're kind of stacking them. It was all built with the Hellerman tools, and then we slowly glued it to the show glasses, not his other glasses. So again, you don't always have the luxury of doing what you want. Just a heads up.
Yeah, and the audio difference, I mean, obviously, like for live theater at least, that's what I can kind of speak from. The audio difference is incredible from here to here, right? Like I have to do so much more EQing when it's here just because of how the face is built, right? Than when it's here. Sometimes you can't help it. There's a lot of hats, right? You can't have a mic hidden under hats or whatever, so you have to do one here. There's actually shows I've done with double miking where it's not actually a backup, where they're double mic'd, but for hats, and there's so many hats on, off, on, off. I'll do one here, and then they'll also wear an ear rig. And the mixer has a A/B button. So like in this scene, it's this mic. In that scene, it's that mic, because there's so much on, off, on, off. Yeah.
Magicians are notorious for having three mics on. First one, second one, and then they'll finally get down to their third mic just to be, you know.
A follow question to the double miking. How far are you spacing the elements apart? Do you have a choice? Like, what are the...
Usually right next to each other, unless it's a profile thing where we have to stagger them to get them a little further apart, but usually try to get them as close to right next to each other as I can.
Yeah. The only time I haven't done that is like a designer preference. The example was at Hamilton, the guy playing Hamilton wouldn't, for some reason, I was back of house, so I didn't know what was going on in front of house, but they said they didn't sound the same being side by side. They weren't, because you want them when they're back to be identical. So for some reason, bringing them the tip of the mic back made them sound the same. So like, again, you do that, but sometimes for whatever reason, you have to switch it up. So, yeah.
I've also worked in situations where my main and my backup elements are actually different manufacturers. But because of what we're doing with that's usually like in a HD situation where we're not reinforcing in the house, it's just going to broadcast, so they can EQ the snout out of them, whatever they need to do to them to make them sound good. And so
for like profile, because you can have a really skinny like Mickey one next to a Twinplex, and it's not as bulky. Yeah.
And it may be in different places. Like I sent I don't know if you could pull up the picture.
Yeah, let me pull up that picture. Go ahead and talk about it. Give me a sec to grab it.
This was from Porgy and Bess at the Met on Porgy. His mics ended up on his chest of all places, which usually is a horrible place to mic someone. But we ended up with a Twinplex mic up high on the arrow, and then a different mic down below. Again, I believe the Twinplex was the one that we went to air with, because those sound so awesome on bass baritone voices. And it was, we were dealing right up to almost the day we went to air with placement, with rustling, with movement. And because we started with it, the first couple performances, he was on an ear rig, and it just got to the point, he just literally just didn't have enough hair to cover it. And so we had to start looking for alternate placement. So we ended up using just moleskin and taping the mic up onto the inside, little moleskin sandwich, little bit on the front, bit on the back, and just taped it in to his undershirt there to make him disappear.
And it looks like he has hair there too, so you really have to create a little bit of distance there too.
Yes.
It's a pain in the butt sometimes. Different gentlemen with too much hair there.
Right. All kinds of bits and bobs, but that's we're peeking to the opera there.
We have to do that in theater sometimes too, especially on like young talent when there's kids in the show. Is that just because they're kids, they get really, things on their face. I've done it before. Yeah. So we'll do it like exactly like that. Like through a buttonhole on there. It's not the best, but when it comes, or that to be another answer for hats, right? Sometimes it just sounds better if there's like a actor who just has like a cameo and they're not moving around too much. Sometimes just for that scene in the coat pocket, we'll put in, and then for that scene, it's another mic,
Right.
So we use
and sometimes the situation that I run into in at the opera is you may have, unlike Broadway, because Broadway, that regiment again. Sometimes what I end up with in the opera is that I'll have a different person playing a character for another performance, and his costume will be different. So I had one gentleman that was wearing an overcoat and a vest and this ruffled sort of shirt underneath, and it came up high, and there was this great big kind of like tie at the top, and then he had chains. Well, with that one, I was able to tuck the mic elements up on the back side of the tie. We would put like little snaps and kind of just hit it right up under the back side. Well, fast forward a few months, somebody else comes in to play that. And I'm like, oh, he has a completely different, he wasn't wearing that all buttoned up shirt. He was actually had it very open with his chest exposed, and without the tie. So I'm like, well, now we're doing something new. So in that case, I was able to just take those two mics and tape them on the underside of the lapel of his vest and have it all built into the vest. So once he put the vest on, we were good to go. And we just had to work with a little bit of rubbing, but otherwise, it's just things come at you. You just figure it out.
And in an emergency, based on this picture that's up on the screen right now, If it really rubs against the hair, I've cut a little hole in the back of if they own the shirt, the store owns the shirt, right at the collar where the tag is, and I'll come and I'll pull it under the collar, then I'll pull it all the way around to whatever side he's dominant on, so you can hide the mic. And that's an emergency thing. But know that if the show owns the shirt and they have a couple, you can put a little slit by the tag and come from inside the shirt and hide it all the way around. So
that was something that we did for one of the performances leading up to this was our final. We had tried it underneath, and the mixers just weren't happy with that yet. We have done that on other shows, and it was perfectly fine.
It's not a great solution, but based on what I was telling you with one of the talent who said, "Whoa, don't touch my hair," that was the punch.
We've totally done that in the past. Sometimes we'll put a hush lav in there. We'll tuck and then put the hush lav up underneath with the microphone in it.
It's interesting. I was thinking like our different miking techniques for because I work in live primarily, right? Like we have to deal with so much. We're like, you guys have to deal with like the nuances of it because you hear everything on the cans for recording. We're like, I have to deal with so much of the gain before feedback issues, right? We want to get it as closest to their mouth as possible within reason of, other departments not getting, not hurting their artistic process. So it's interesting of like how we use different techniques with different things. Because you guys have to do so much nuanced sound where we have to do so much like, we just want more gain. We just need more gain. Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, so I was going to say along with the gain, but you also need to keep it on their bodies, and it's like getting the stuff nailed down.
And how many times have you asked talent, could you please project a little more? Speak up.
Every show.
I know. And
I don't. Not in opera.
Oh yeah, in opera you're fine. Opera they're blowing up.
Yeah, opera. But you'll have some talent of pop nature. You barely sing, and the mixers are like, "You go tell them." It's like, well, you'll tell the stage manager. Like I said, you have to figure out who to talk to. You don't always get to talk. You'll talk to their monitor guy. It's like, can you please have them project a little more without affecting the performance? But speak up.
No, because at the Goodman, the last couple of years I was there, we started miking all the plays. Like I was line for line mixing, which you guys know what that is. That's like literally one mic's up for every line they speak. That's what makes musicals. And so because I do that technique, I did it with my plays. And so we mic'd every actor in every straight play. So a play without music I'm sorry, I don't know if you guys know that. But so I would we mic all that, and that was always fun with the actors. I actually in one show, it was a show where there's a lot of ad-libbing. And I talked to this, you do the proper protocol. You talk to the stage manager, you talk to the director. And they actually had me stand in front of the cast on like a rehearsal day and explain to them what I was doing and why like your mic's not going to be picked up. A, you have to project it if you don't have one. And B, if you ad-lib, no one's going to hear you because I'm literally following the script. So if you want to ad-lib, that's great. We just need to keep it consistent. So like explaining to them, hey guys, this is what I'm doing in the back of the house. When you talk, your mic's up. When you're done talking, your mic. And it was funny to see like that realization of like, you're doing a lot of work. I was like, yeah, we're scene partners. We are scene partners. So like them sometimes it takes that idea of like, hey, this is what my job is and I'm here to support you. Like if you project, you're going to make my job easier and you're going to sound better. Or like, if we can like, please ad lib. I don't want to hinder your process, but if you can ad lib and just lock those ad libs down. So it's not really ad libbing, but can we have some consistency? Like you don't need to say the same words, but can you say them in the same spot? Yeah, so it's interesting when you have to do all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And there's a show I do called Paris by Night where for 45 minutes it's a comedy, but we don't rehearse the comedy really. So I'll stand on the side of the stage on a PL just going, all right, mic 1, mic 5, mic 2. And I'll do this for 45 minutes because the mixer has never seen and it's kind of just shot a little bit. So no one gets a real run at it. So volunteer once in a while to call out a mic quietly, of course, but
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, interfacing with the actors is, if they can,
is
a lot of times, like I always say, like what the most important thing is the input you're getting into the mic, right? No matter what, you can have the best quality mic, but if someone's giving you nothing, then you're going to go nowhere. So
Fair. I wanted to bring up the Musgraves special. That we talked about. Love to, if you could share the pouch and the different techniques that you used for that.
We did a Casey Musgrave Christmas special a couple of years ago, last year, I think. And another West Coast A2 Mike Cruz and I were using twin plexes, but the mixer decided he wanted to hide everything. And based on, I've never really seen him hid, Mike and I came up with different ways, because like you guys were talking about, everybody has a different style. He had all the rye coats and he had all the stuff, and I kind of created spaces around, because you kind of have to leave the whole head sort of exposed and breathing. Casey Musgrave is a huge fan of Cher, and she kind of modeled this Christmas special around the Cher, Sonny and Cher show. So some of the wardrobes were really sheer and really form-fitting and stuff. So we're hiding it behind her hair, and you're trying to figure out where to hide mics and for the most part, I managed to do everything on gaff tape and double stick, based on the needs of what the people I was doing. Because Mike was doing Casey, he used all the rye coats because everything was super sheer. I like to create a space on those particular mics, and I hadn't really hidden them much, so we were trying to figure it out as we were going. And there was no possibility of anything in here because everything was just moving so fast that the hair and makeup just wasn't. So we were trying to hide them wherever we could, and we hit everybody. So it's 2 A2s, and it's like you guys, it's 10 mics, and we're just trying to stay ahead of the curve on it. So a case study in not sheer terror, but what are we doing? Go to the Casey Musgrave special, and we only had one fault, and it was mine, because I forgot to ask, and this just a tip, make sure you know what your talent's doing, because even if it's stress relief and they're doing something out of normal or backflipping or whatever, like on dancing shows, know to ask those questions. So we only had one fail, and we only had to do one short line at the end of it, but it worked out okay. But again, first time hiding that many twins at the time. Yeah.
All right.
And again, you're on the fly. Every A2, every audio person, most like anything in TV, sometimes it's just, okay, I think I have an idea, and you run with it.
Yeah, oftentimes I will ask people, just, you never know what they're going to do when they get out on stage. And sometimes, even if it's in a cooking show, Rachel Ray or something, as I'm miking them up, I'll just make light of it as I'm putting the mic on their belt. And I'm just like, are you doing any cartwheels out there today? They might say yes. You never know. So
that AGT show you did, you never know what they're going to do.
You never know what they're going to do out there. So I will usually ask that question as I'm miking, just in case. And also, as far as go ahead, Jim. I was going to say, as far as hiding things, the packs themselves become challenging for hiding. And when we did the Sound of Music with Carrie Underwood, because she had so many different costume changes. Now the mics she had those braids and things, but the wig wasn't built for the packs to go up in there. So she still ended up with it. She still had the cable down the back of her neck, which we had to deal with. But then, because so many of her costumes were so sheer, and not sheer like see-through, but the fabrics that they were made out of were very silky and, not like heavy, sturdy. So she ended up with a pair of Spanx that we doubled. So we used the second pair of Spanx and then cut them off. So it was just, so it created a bunch of pouches across the bottom of the Spanx so that we could push the pack up and move it over, depending on whether the packs should be in the front for a particular costume, around the sides, or in the back, depending on how the dress is laid. So most quick changes were me like scooching the pack up, scooching the pack over, scooching the pack back down, so it was on the inside of the space.
And the other thing with, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, based on what you guys are talking about, think about choreography too, because sometimes they're sliding on the right side or on their back, and it can't be there. I've had to put it in front. I've had to put it, on a kind of near a rib, because they're sliding
up underneath.
Yeah, and
up underneath the.
Sometimes it's just an inner thigh, and you get away with it based on just wardrobe.
Yeah.
But again, you really have to ask all these questions ahead of time.
Yeah.
Because the first time someone slides on that pack, and now medics are coming in, there's some explaining to do.
Yeah, thigh packs end up being our best friend sometimes. The inner of the thigh, especially on like big dance shows. I mean, if they're not wearing, if they're not wearing tight, then you can do a thigh pack. But yeah, we've done it too, where I've made like out of wood, had the shop make like in rehearsal, because then we have more time in theater, but have the shop make samples of exactly the dimensions of, some of the shops now, like Sound Associates and Mass, actually have 3D models of different packs.
Yeah.
So they lend them out so that the actors can, in the rehearsal room, which is theater, can put it on, because they don't know themselves, right? A lot of times,
Right.
you know. But
And in the costume fittings, they can.
Yep, they can be like, kind of
yeah, exactly.
there. Oh wait, I could do it here, but now I'm doing this choreography, and
Right.
So, yeah.
So questions are good. Just a heads up.
The million things that we think about.
Everything. Yep. And know that it's all going to change. Like, you could have all the pre-research, and then, like, for us, you know, first day of tech, I was saying before, we did West Side Story at the opera, and I was A1 front of house, but they did all these fittings and everything, and the dancer just got flustered and took the pack off and threw it at my A2 and said, "I'm not wearing it." And so that's when we have to go in and be like, okay, nobody go yell at him. Like, okay, so how can we make this better? Because we need you to wear it, because you have 3 lines coming up. So how can we, okay, so I'm gonna tonight after rehearsal, I'm gonna personally make you an ear rig, like all those things that you can do all the pre-work, and in a split second it goes out the window. And they're not being difficult, right? They're just trying to do their job too, and they have nerves, and we have nerves, and we all want to get it right, and we're all perfectionists, and you know, so it's that game of like, how can we support each other?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. There's 3 people who have asked, what do you do if your talent is bald?
Ear rigs.
Correct.
Ear rig.
Usually it's ear rigs, but sometimes you may need to go an alternate position under a collar, on a lapel, in a tie, over the knot in a tie.
Yeah. In the case of that one on the glasses, and you just hit it underneath. It depends on if they have like we did one where they were just wearing a towel, literally just wearing a towel. So we wrapped everything in the towel and they walked around with that. It comes down to wardrobe. With Wendell Pierce, when we were doing Grease, he was playing coach. But we really just put it in I had a wardrobe help me, and he was wearing a coach's jacket. So we kind of created a little rig. And right at the beginning of the coach's jacket, you know, and you kind of hit it in here and created a little space so it didn't rub. But again, it's just, you have to really look at what you're working with wardrobe wise. And if there's any props because again, basically the scenario, what they're talking about is here or somewhere here. That's just not always the case.
Yeah. And with the ear rig, like if you can do it, especially like making your own, you can make them pretty low profile, right? You can like, if that's like with my milliner wire, and that's where painting for me comes in really handy. Like I will usually try, if somebody bald, regardless of their skin tone, I'll try to get a tan mic, because it gives me a canvas. I know the Twin Packs actually have white ones. I'd even get those because it gives me like a blank canvas to work with, right? And I'll do it, and then I'll use my Tegaderm and really try to get it, because there's nothing to hide, right? It's all out there.
Right.
And the wardrobe for theater wants it to be theater magic, right? They don't want to see anything. I do the same with TV, I'm sure. So like, yeah, you try to make it as low profile as possible and really get it and really get the color right, so that, yeah, an audience member could, like, in the first 5 rows, will see it, but then just accept it because we tried. I know that sounds, but it's like, they see that, like, oh, I'm not supposed to see that. Their brain will not see it, right? Or if it looks blatant, and then someone's just going to keep looking at it, and it's going to ruin their experience as an audience.
And that's usually a TV director with OCD. Why?
Yeah. And then once the director,
and now it's getting farther back, and the mixer's like, I can't hear it, but
And then once the director, or for us, a lot of times the costume designer sees it once, it's going to be their obsession for the rest of rehearsal. So like, if I can make it where they don't notice it, my job's easier. So like, I'm always going to be like, we're not here, we're invisible.
Right.
Again, good relationships with all the departments too. It's really an interpersonal business. You just really need to know who to talk to. Make sure you have a dialogue that says, hey, I'm getting hammered here. Please, let's figure this out together.
Right. All right. Another question. I know this is totally great. We're actually only have about 10 minutes left. A few people have asked about how you're picking what lav you're using. Like, where does that decision come from?
For theater, for me, it's usually the designer's decision. So that's above, for lack of a better term, above my pay grade. I have ones I like more because the ones I've used, but for me, the sound designer, who's responsible for the overall sound, usually picks. And a lot of times that can change, right? They can choose mics. They want to use this type of mic, and they think it sounds good because in the past, this one sounds good on, like, we're saying baritones, or this one. And then in this show, for whatever reason, they have to use something else. Or in other times, some mics are more water resistant, right? We're doing Singing in the Rain, and we need a mic that can withstand the guy singing in water. So, okay, this type of mic, we know from experience, withstands water better. And sometimes with that, the mic that stands water better may not be the best sounding mic. So like in that scene, we're going to use X mic because it withstands, but I really want the mic that I like, that I personally like how it sounds better. So we're going to do a mic swap. That's
right. And go ahead.
Go ahead, Jack. Go ahead.
I say sometimes it's dependent on what a shop sends you. If you're in a situation where you're dealing with rental gear, it's whatever the shop happens to have. And then for me in the opera world, it's just what we have in stock. I have been able to have some influence on making some changes and buying new elements and trying out some new things that manufacturers come out with. But otherwise, we have like our stock gear.
And for the broadcast portion of it, it really depends on which mixer is using it more. If it's a dialogue mic, then it's the production mixer. If it happens to be some vocal mic, then it's a music mixer. And then it may be the monitor mixer weighs in a little bit. So it's a dialogue between the three mixers and everyone talking. So it has nothing to do with me or any A2 really.
Yeah. And budget's normally for theater at least, because we're normally on a tighter budget. Budget comes into a lot, like you were saying. Like a lot of times with regional theaters, it's whatever, like, you know, they have a certain budget and what they have in stock, and okay, maybe we can buy a new lav and a one they like for the two leads, but all the chorus members, they have to take the X mic that we've used 6 more times, but it's the budget reason. So yeah.
Cool. Closing question for you all. For someone who's just getting started in the industry, what advice would you have for them?
The advice I got from the guy who brought me in the business, Mr. Garcia, this is what he told me when I first met him. Find out what you like to do, find out who does it, and just go chat with them. And that's what I did. Unfortunately, I kept standing in front of him for 30 years, so here I am.
I guess I was told early on by someone, it's all about the details and never say no to a client. The answer might be no in the end, but never say no to them, because there are always so many other people that need to be involved in a conversation. But every gig leads to the next gig. There's so much interconnection in this business that, you know, like Stephanie was saying in the beginning, what was it? Show up on time.
Bring a wrench, show up on time, and don't be a jerk. That's,
right,
yeah.
because everybody in the business knows each other, and that's key.
And it's coast to coast. It's absolutely coast to coast.
We're really a small group of people. We really all know each other, and so the biggest advice, I teach a sound class at DePaul. I teach 18 and 19-year-olds, and that's what I tell them. I say, you know, my job, what I teach is how to be a stagehand, right? So it's a 3-course tech class. So they learn digital from one guy, analog from another. And then I'm like, great, you know all this, and this is how you're going to pay your rent. Like, that's kind of my thing. And so I tell them, I was like, if you learn nothing else from me, be on time, bring a wrench, and don't be a jerk. So essentially, like, respect your other coworkers by showing up. If the call is 8 o'clock, you're showing up at 7:45 because we're going to start at 8 o'clock. And then always bring the proper tools. And sometimes that means that you need to bring your own stuff because it's what you like, right? I don't need to bring my A2 kit with me, but I know that if I bring it, I'm going to have everything I need. And then be nice to everybody. We are in such a, and we see our coworkers more than we see our families. Well, not recently, but so it's like, if you could have the greatest job, right? You can have a job where you're kicking back and you're in a hotel gig and you're dealing with one mic on a podium, right? But if like the guy next to you is just grumpy and being a jerk the whole day, it's the worst.
Yeah.
But you can have a job where you're in the weeds, right? Like it sucks, like everything's breaking, nothing's going right, the talent's being a jerk, the producer's not giving you breaks. Like, but if you're with a group that you're just like working together and really making each other laugh and just knowing that like, look, this could be worse, it's a great day. So that's like the best advice I give is just having, and really, I know we're in a competitive industry, right? Especially now with all the COVID stuff and everybody's scared, right? Nobody knows when we're going back to work. I feel like when we do go back, which keep my fingers crossed, that we're all really going to have each other's back and really be there for each other and like really I know we're competitive. I know we all want to fight for the same jobs, but in the end, we don't, right? In the end, if I can't do a job, I'm going to recommend Jenny. I'm going to recommend Jared. Jenny,
Right.
you know, that's how it all works. Is like, we all can't take all the work. And,
Right.
and if you're nice and you're kind and, you know, you give stuff to, and then learn from everyone, right? Like, I learned a thing today about the Hellerman things I didn't know. Like, you learn everything on, no matter how long you're in the industry, you're never going to know everything. And because there's 700 ways to do one thing. So maybe somebody else's way that you're like, oh no, I totally make the best ear rigs. Well, maybe Jenny does. Oh, that's a really cool. I'm going to steal that. I'm stealing that from you.
Exactly. Totally.
Absolutely.
We're always sharing. It's that arts and crafts thing where we're constantly honing our craft, but we're sharing our craft. We're like picking up little things like, oh, what do you do with that tape? Or micropore. How do you use micropore? You know, and then I think it's funny sometimes that being an example, it's like we started using micropore back, I think it was Sound of Music or Peter Pan, and then suddenly a few years past that, I met another A2 that mostly does TV work, and then here he is, he's like, I found out about this because somebody who worked with you. And then he's got this whole kit and he's showing me his markers and how he tests the colors, and he's got it all like, I was totally blown away. You know, so
It's cool. Yeah.
If I can add one thing to what these ladies were saying right here, if you're new and you're kind of a couple of years into this, ask a question. Please ask a question. Anyone will answer a question. Just don't ask it when someone's hair's on fire, because that's the wrong time. Anyone in this business, yes, is competitive, but if I make you a stronger person, you're more used to me than you fading away and not asking a question. It's just, don't be scared. Yeah, that's all.
Yes. If you don't know,
never let them see you sweat.
Yes. I would rather have somebody ask than yes me, and then go do it wrong. And then like an hour later, I'm like, oh, just ask. Be like, I don't know what you just spoke German to me. I don't know what you just said. Oh, okay, my bad. Sorry.
Right.
We do talk in an alphabet language.
Sorry. It's okay to fail once in a while. Just don't do it on air.
That's pretty good advice. Yeah. And what a testament. Yeah, what a testament to that for you guys being here today and sharing this information with all these guests. Thank you guys for doing that. We are at just about 90 minutes. I feel like we could talk all day, but in the interest of everyone's time here, I think we're going to wrap this thing up. A massive thank you to our wonderful industry guests here, Stephanie, Craig, and Jenny. You guys were fantastic. This 90 minutes has flown by, and I think everybody got an insane amount of information. I know I did. I know, Stephanie, you learned something. I think everybody took something away from this, just as you mentioned. So a ton of thank yous coming through the chat right now and the questions. Everybody talking about some fantastic information. So really, you guys knocked it out of the park today. So we really appreciate you being here. So without further ado,
thank you guys.
Happy Friday. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody.
You too.
Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.